Jai Mataji and welcome listeners. Today we will continue our discussion that we started in the previous episode on how to prepare the body. Just to recap, in the previous episode we discussed how ready we are. We discussed the power of controlling the body with the mind. We discussed the goal that we want to achieve. And we touched upon additional areas like the correct diet, the approach to diet, and what the body is telling us. So today we will continue discussing areas related to the body. But before we get started, let's keep this one goal in mind. We are trying to connect with the God within us and express God. I have a question for you today. I'd like you to reflect on your life and ask yourself, is there something you wish you had learned when you were a child? Or is there something you wish was brought to your attention very early on? And if that thing was brought to your attention, then your life may have gone in a completely different direction? I'm really curious to know what your answer is, so please feel free to leave it in the comments. When I ask myself this question, what I really wish is that in our schooling system, we were taught how to live life. We were taught the skills needed for a person to survive in life and not just subjects. Back in the day, the Gurukul system was very prominent and there was a lot of value in the system like that. And today I'm really glad that there are efforts made to bring that system back. And the reason these systems were so valuable was because there are things that need to be taught correctly at a very early age. And there's consequences if they're not taught properly. You see, it's one thing to live life, and it's another thing to live life in the right way. Now let's learn from a real life example. We've all heard of Steve Jobs. He is famous for his contributions to founding Apple. He's actually one of the most famous people in the history of technology. Despite being such an iconic figure, believe it or not, he struggled with something that is extremely basic to everyone, and that is hygiene. And this story goes back to the 1970s when he worked at Atari. Now, at the time, he switched to a diet which he considered very special, and it was a diet where he only ate fruits. He believed that because he was on this special diet that he didn't need to take any showers anymore. So he stopped taking showers, he stopped putting deodorant on himself, and as one would expect, he started becoming smelly. Now the smell on his body increased to the point that it was affecting everyone around him. And so complaints had increased. And this left the managers with a new dilemma. So the management didn't want to get rid of him, but they had to find another way to make this work. So Steve Jobs was made to work alone at night when absolutely no one would be around. Cleanliness. It's something so simple. It's something so straightforward. And yet, we realize that this is not something that everyone learns. And this isn't something that even people know where to draw the line. And just as we see with Steve Jobs, he had to face consequences of poor hygiene. And this also happens with all of us. If we don't learn things at a young age, that means we're going to have to spend time later on in life to learn it. And instead of doing the things that we need to be doing, then we're trying to learn the things that we should have learned when we were children. And so that's why it's important to teach children the art of living. But to teach a child the art of living, a parent has to learn this first. And there is an art to our body, which we also must learn. Let's take a look at sleeping. Now, this is something that we do every day. Sleeping is when our body is recovering, it's recharging, and it allows us to prepare for the next day. And we know that for children and babies, sleeping is extremely important. because it is when they sleep that their body is actually growing and developing. And this is why newborn babies sleep long hours, and as they grow, the hours that they're sleeping reduce. So the key question here is there an art to sleeping? And the answer is yes. And Mother and Sri Aurobindo have explained this very nicely. What they have said is that until one hits maturity, sleep should not be any less than 8 hours. And so as adults, we need to be very, very mindful of the example that we're setting in front of children. So I've personally seen this in my life where the adults are watching TV and the child is also watching TV. But at a certain time, then the parents will tell the child, hey, it's time to go to bed. And so the child is now forced to sleep, even though the child wants to watch TV. But when the child is seeing this, what the child is seeing is that I'm a child and so I have to sleep. But they're an adult or they're a parent and they can stay up. So now the child wants to grow up because the child knows that when you become an adult, you don't have to follow the rules of sleeping. Now this child is looking forward to becoming an adult. The child really doesn't understand the benefits of sleeping. And the child can only understand the benefits of sleeping if the child and everybody else around the child is following the same rules. You see, another thing that I've seen with children and adults is that they're working, they're busy to a point where they have no energy and then they crash and then they go to bed. We need to start taking the process of sleeping very seriously, because how you sleep indicates what state you're going to go into when you sleep, and that is going to affect the quality of your sleep. Mother says that if you're extremely tired and you just fall asleep, that means that you're going into an unconscious state. And when you go into this unconscious state, the body isn't being refreshed. So you're not actually going to be recharged for the next day. And that's why in the next day, when you wake up, you still feel tired. And if you're doing this, you need to start making changes to your routine. So as a general rule, it is recommended that before you go to sleep, you have to make sure that you are well rested and relaxed. Now, one thing to do is to try and avoid taking heavy meals right before sleeping. Eat something light, drink something light like milk or juice. But there's two things that a person needs to do. One is to quiet the mind, and the other one is to remove any tension from the body. So if you want to be able to do that, start incorporating meditation practices right before you sleep. Listen to music that will help calm you down. And then when you do that, what that means is when you go to sleep, you will end up going to a higher consciousness state that will allow you to regain the energy that you need. And hey, it's not a bad idea to just simply pray that you meet Mother while you're sleeping. So with this information, I'd like to know, how are you falling asleep? You see, if we want to be successful in achieving the goal that we're all working towards, and if we want this transformation to be effective, not only do we need a well-rested body, but we also need physical activity. You see, here we're talking about forces that are needed to transform this body, and our physical body is extremely dense. So as we do more physical activity, we're making our body more elastic, more flexible. And because of this will allow the forces to flow through our body very easily. The concept is very similar to our artery. If a person has blocked arteries, then this person is going to end up with heart attacks or a stroke. And so our physical body is exactly the same way. We have to start making it more elastic. So if you aren't doing any physical activity, please start. And remember, we're not trying to show off our body. We only have one goal, and that is to make our body so elastic that the forces can start working in them. But make sure you're doing everything in a balance. When people are building muscles, they will first exert themselves beyond what their current capacity is. And as a result, micro tears will happen in the muscles. And this is a really good thing. Because once this person is done the workout, then the body will repair these micro tears and make the muscles stronger. But if a person is trying to build their muscles without taking any break or a rest, what's going to happen is that the muscles are going to damage even further, and this can cause long-term injury. So develop the body and make sure you're developing it with balance. And whatever physical activity you do, the goal is always to try and be better with time. So for example, if you're running 1 kilometer every day, challenge yourself to run slightly more. Don't stop yourself from progressing, because progress stops when you don't push yourself. We've all seen Michael Phelps. He has record-breaking Olympic achievements which other athletes were not able to get to. And people said, well, he had the physical traits he needed for his achievements. But it wasn't just that. He also had the right mindset. And when the two were put together, that helped him achieve what others hadn't. Now, when we talk about physical activity, another thing to consider is competitive sports. Mother and Sri Aurobindo were extremely supportive of children being in competitive sports and making sure that this was a part of their education only if it is approached in the right way. When children are in competitive sports, they will learn to become more courageous. They will become more energetic. They will learn how to work in a team. They will learn how to make decisions faster, and then they will also learn how to respond faster. And last but not least, they will be able to develop a really strong willpower. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, "Do your duty without attachment to the results." And competitive sports is a perfect place where one can apply this. An adult or a child, it doesn't matter who they are. When a person is playing a game, the only goal should be to do the best. Now, once the game is done, then a person must reflect on their performance in that game and identify areas that still can be improved upon. Spend the time to improve upon that and assess the improvement with other remaining games that they play. A game should not be played just to show off to somebody else or to put somebody down. And if children or adults are playing in that attitude, then that is an attitude that needs to be corrected. And this is an attitude that needs to be instilled into children at a very young age. And with that, we're at the end of today's episode. Just to summarize, today we touched upon the art of taking care of the body. We discussed hygiene, sleeping, resting, and physical activity. In the next episode, we will talk about knowing your body, restoring harmony in the body, establishing goals, and taking conscious approaches in developing the body. See you next time. Jai Mataji.